Subrata, congratulations, and to your family. I spent a lot of time in Thunder Bay as a kid, and I never thought I would run into anybody from Thunder Bay. I figure if you're not leaving Thunder Bay, you're not leaving Thunder Bay. So, a great place, and it makes you strong. Makes you strong. What an honor to be here. Thank you for that remarkable introduction. Yeah, a lot of that stuff happened in the last 2 weeks, actually. I ate a hot dog at 5 in the morning, dipped in water to show how Joey Chestnut does it at the Coney Island hot dog eating thing. I needed to pick a song because they do that on the morning show at CNN, and I really was just sort of frustrated and annoyed by the whole thing. And I said, just put that Call Me Maybe thing on. And they did. So now everybody thinks that's on my playlist. Listen, it's something else to be here tonight. I started my career, my first job in the world was here in D.C. I was an intern for CNN. It took me about 10 years to make my way back to CNN, and I've been at CNN for the last 11 years. But I started here. Boy, D.C. in 1992, 1993 was a different scene than it is today. So it is really, really great to be back, and thank you for having me be a part of this. Hello to the CNN team. Nice representation tonight. I love it. And to Ismet Mangla from Money, who was part of a Loeb Award-winning team the other day. I got to be at the Loeb Awards as a presenter, and you guys were winners. Congratulations for an excellent series in Money magazine. I have a few people who came up to me today and didn't know that I was of South Asian heritage, so I wanted to tell you about that for a second. I don't know what you thought I was, but my parents, my great-great-grandparents were from the Gujarat and left in about 1893 and went over to South Africa and then subsequently left for Kenya, where I was born. And then we moved to Toronto, where I grew up, and started my career here. But I went back to Canada and worked for about 10 years. And then I moved here. And if nobody really knows what I am, I say I'm Maltese just for fun. Because nobody really knows anybody from Malta. So they don't really know that I'm not Maltese. But in fact, I am South Asian. I did actually just recently, my wife Lori is here, and we went to India a few months ago, and I went to this little village in the Gujarat that I'm from, and let me tell you, calling it a village is giving it a lot. I suspect it hasn't changed much since 1893, except that everybody has a cell phone and a dish for TV. But it very much, I just can't imagine it looked very different. If it didn't, I can't imagine what it looked like back in 1893. But it was good to go back. And India is particularly exciting, largely because everybody there loves the news. I mean, I've just never seen people consume news in every fashion possible. They consume news in ways that I didn't know you could consume news. And they actually still read newspapers, which is interesting. For those of you who don't know what I do, I'm the chief business correspondent for CNN and for CNN International. I, on a daily basis, now anchor a show called World Business Today. So it's 9 a.m. Eastern Time, but it's broadcast on CNN International. So it's the end of the day business show for Asia. It's 6:30 p.m. in India, 9 o'clock p.m. in Hong Kong, 10 o'clock in Tokyo. And those are the only places I know how to measure time. So I start my day off with coverage in large part of U.S. news for an Asian audience and interpretations of Asian news for other parts of my audience. And then throughout the day, I do other things for CNN. I write a column for Money magazine and remind myself how much harder writing is than being on TV. I do stuff for CNN Money, and I, of course, do things on CNN, often in prime time. So there are many days in which I am the only business journalist in the world in prime time on all ends of things, which sounds fun, but it's kind of tiring, but I do like it. And then I have a weekend show, which airs on Saturdays at 1 and Sundays at 3. It's called Your Money. In fact, this weekend's show is particularly good because we have another South Asian on it, Farid Zakaria. And of course, you all know Sanjay. I have this great, I mean, it's just this great job in finance and business and the economy. And these days, I've got some pretty strong views on what is going on in the world and what's going on in this city and how dangerous some of the things that are going on in American politics are for the daily lives of Americans. And frankly, if it's dangerous for the daily lives of Americans, it's dangerous for everybody. You can watch the show, which you should do. It'll increase the ratings. But I will give you the abridged version, and that is that the best analogy for what is going on in the world right now is a hurricane. And it is centered over Europe, and its bands are big, and they are touching our coasts. They've already affected Asia. Europe is like America combined. They are the same size individually, and that makes them everybody's biggest client. In fact, for China, they really are. So the weakness of the European consumer, and we're really talking weakness. I mean, we've got 12% roughly unemployment across Europe, official numbers, and in some cases 24% youth unemployment, up to 50% in some nations. These are just people who are not working. They don't have jobs, which means they don't buy stuff. And Europeans actually bought our stuff. We don't make that much, we don't sell that much, but that which we do sell, Europeans were great buyers of, and that meant coming here and taking trips and staying in hotels and eating at restaurants, but not just that, manufactured goods. And they can do that less and less now. They also buy less of the stuff that was manufactured in India and China, and as a result, people who are prospering in those nations are prospering less. There are many measures of economic activity in China, for instance. GDP is one of them, obviously. But GDP is like a big, fat, hulking number. It doesn't tell the whole story, but you can look at any economic indicator in China. One of the most interesting is power output. They're just they're generating less power because they're consuming less power because factories are closing. And factories are closing, which means people who are getting more prosperous are not getting more prosperous, which means anything that they could have bought, they're not buying. So Europe's weakness is affecting Asia, and it is now affecting us. And you can't do much if a hurricane's coming. You can board up your windows and you can, go away. But your government actually can. And our government is not. There are three very basic things this Congress can be doing to fix, to try and fend off, to build a hurricane shelter. One of them is not waiting until December 31st to deal with the tax cut extensions. And that doesn't mean, I do think that they should be extended for the middle class and not for the wealthy, but that's not the point. The point is, I might be right, I might be wrong, it doesn't matter. I'd just like to have the discussion before December 31st. I would think it very brave if people would have the discussion before the election, but nobody's going to do that. And that's kind of offensive because that lack of certainty makes people who could be spending money not spend it because they won't actually know if they'll have less money or more money in their pockets on January 1st. It's irresponsible for Congress not to do it. Number two, remember that debt ceiling debacle that got us into a mess? We're going to have another one in February maybe. How about we don't discuss it? How about we discuss it before February or January or December 31st? How about we even talk about it right now? Now, we spent our time voting down for the 33rd time the Health Care Act this week to make a point. I can't go into my office and tell my boss, I'm not actually doing any work today, I'd just like to make a point. So, we need to stop that kind of nonsense. Because people's jobs hang in the balance when things like that happen. And the third thing is this sequestration. I'd like to know who came up with that word. It's a stupid name for a stupid thing, but it's this idea that if they, these cuts that'll just take place because they couldn't agree to that last debt ceiling stuff, so we're just going to cut the budget across the board, which is like taking a big marbled piece of meat and somebody asking you to cut the fat out of it, and all you do is you take 20% off the meat, so you've got off the top of it. So you've got the same amount of meat and the same amount of fat, and nothing has actually changed, but there's just less food, there's less calories. So we again, got to deal with it sometime. Why not deal with it now? Why not go down in flames because you actually did the right thing, because you reached across the aisle and you made a deal with somebody the other side? So those are the things that we need to fix, and if we don't fix them, there is some chance that a recession could hit the United States. It's not a big chance, but there is some chance, and that's the kind of stuff that worries me. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I told my parents I think they thought I was going to be a lawyer, and I might have given that impression. And then I told my dad one day that I was going to be a journalist, and I had never really seen the expression on his face before that. We lived in a little bungalow in Toronto, and we used to rent the basement out for income. And all my dad could say is that I had a journalist as a tenant once, and he never paid his rent. So I told him I'd try and do better than that. And I went, this is my first job here in DC. I came to be an intern at CNN. I worked on Crossfire. And I was so mad, all I ever wanted to do was write for a newspaper. And nobody would give me a job. So I was really quite annoyed to have to come and work with these dumb desk jockeys on TV. I just didn't think they were very smart. I didn't think anybody on TV was very smart. But that's the job I took. And it worked out pretty well, actually. I'm not sure we're that smart anyway, but it's a good job. So I came here, I worked here. All I wanted to do was get back to CNN. I went back to Canada, and as Subrata says, Canada's great for learning the craft, for getting out there and just doing the news. To this day, the news is less politicized in Canada than it is here. Some of the stuff that American media gets away with doesn't wash as much in Canada. So it was a great training ground. And I finally got back here. I got hired by CNN. It was August of 2001. They told me I got the job, so I took a month off, packed all my stuff, and I went away to South Africa, where my family was from. And I got back to New York on Friday, September the 7th, 2001. And they said, your visa's not in order. And I said, I'm Canadian, I don't need a visa. And they said, well, you're working here, you do, and it's not in order. So you have to go back to Canada. And I said, I'm starting a job, this is where I am. And they said, we're not arguing with you, get back on a plane, go to Canada. So I went home, and I called CNN up, and they said, it's fine, it's not a big deal. We're talking to what was then the Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS. It'll all be worked out by Monday. Monday, I'm on the phone with them, didn't get worked out. And, you know, whatever, I have nothing left in Toronto. Everything has been moved. I've sold my car. I got nothing left. The visa, I subsequently learned, was stamped at 8:45 a.m. September 11th, 2001. The visa office that dealt with Toronto was in Vermont. And the normal pattern would be the visa would be approved. It would be FedEx to Atlanta, where our lawyers would deal with it, and CNN would deal with it. They'd FedEx of me, and I would get on a plane. So there's no planes going anywhere. There's no visas. So we're sitting around, and I'm trying to figure this all out. And I had a great relationship with the consulate, the U.S. consulate in Toronto, I'd been a local reporter there for some time. And I called them up. I said, what do I do? I got to get to work. CNN now is quite anxious to have me get to work. They needed all hands on deck. And they said, they muddled around for a little while, made some phone calls, and they said, ultimately the decision to let anybody into the United States this week will be made by the person running the border station. And we have a guy we're friendly with who's running the border crossing at Niagara Falls. If you can get there by midnight tonight, which is when his shift ends, he'll let you through. So I'm sitting here thinking, all right, whatever, I've got nothing left. I mean, there's no cars, you can't rent a car because all the Americans have the cars, there's no trains, there's no planes, nothing. All I had was this shitty little motorcycle that I wasn't going to take with me to New York. So I get on my motorcycle and I ride to Niagara Falls. Never got through the border so quickly in my life, by the way, because no one else was going through. And I rode my motorcycle into New York. I got here on the 13th of September. And boy, CNN thinks I'm a real company man. They were pretty impressed by that. So that's how I got started. I worked for CNN FN for a few years, and then they shut it down. I've actually got it. If you look at all the shows I've anchored, I'm like a baseball closer. When I get named to a new show, it has days left. So always watch out for that kind of thing. It's too bad you can't short TV shows. Anyway, so I've muddled my way through, and I'm now the chief business correspondent, and am fairly busy these days. Anyway, enough about that. Let's talk a little about, for you journalists, you budding journalists, it's great to see a lot of veteran journalists. I love this organization. And I think somebody asked me a few minutes ago what the most important thing the South Asian community can do, you know, right now for the world, and that is give your children over. Like maybe make your firstborn not be a doctor or something like that, and an engineer, and give them over to journalism. It is important. It is kind of crucial, and I say give them over because it's a bit like slavery. It's not a lot of money. But understand that. It is tough, and that's why the most important thing SAJA can do is continue with these scholarships and increase the amount of money that is given. That's why the most important thing you can do is make sure you do support the organization. This does make a big difference. I mean, it's one of the few professions where people really do still intern for free, and you need those internships to get the jobs, and you need these types of awards and recognitions to separate you from the pack. It's a great networking organization. Young journalists need networking support. It is a bit lonely out there. So it's so good that we can do these things. But for those of you who are the budding journalists in the group, it doesn't matter. Subrata said it doesn't matter what part of the industry you work in. It is teamwork. And you do have to exercise a few basics in this business. And the first one, no matter where you are in this industry, is to ask questions. No one is excused from asking good and tough questions. That's the first thing you have to do. You have to analyze. It's not, there's no sense. I mean, in this era of live TV, we tend to think you can just put things on TV or you can just put it out on the web. There has to be some analysis. Anybody can find anything they generally need. What they count on us for is some sense of analysis, some sense of context, which means you have to know your topic. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to know your audience. You have to know what they need from you. You have to be adaptable. You can't be rigid. You have to figure out what purpose you are serving as that link between the news and your consumer. And they are all consumers. They have other things to do. They have better things to do in many cases than spend their time reading your material, listening to your voice, or watching you on TV. So you have to compel them to do so on an ongoing basis. But most importantly, and many of the awards recognize this, the most important thing that you do as a journalist in this changing and complicated world is you bear witness. Some of the greatest tragedies in history have happened because people didn't bear witness. They didn't write down what they saw. Sometimes you can't change it. Sometimes you can't make it better. Sometimes you can just be there. And you can say, I will do what it takes to get this story out and tell the world the truth about what is going on. That holds as true for the Holocaust as it does for depressions, as it does for crooked politicians. Just go and tell the truth. Analyze it, put it in context, and get it out there to your audience. Let the rest take care of itself. Don't kill yourself over ratings. Don't kill yourself over distribution. Don't kill yourself over what parts of the industry are dying and not. Make yourself versatile. Be able to work in all parts of them. Don't decide that you're going to be a TV anchor. Decide that you're going to be a journalist. That's the important thing. We all do those 4 things that I just talked about. Go out, be curious about the world, and change it in your own little way, and bear witness, and that is the difference that you will all make. It's the difference we all want to make, and we have to be reminded, and it's young journalists who remind me that there is something a lot more important to my job than winning in my slot or a lot of people watching. It's just those 4 simple things. So go out and conquer the world. Thank you so much for a great night and for being here. Congratulations to all the winners. Congratulations to SAJA. And please show SAJA your support in helping these kids make a great future. Thank you.